Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. Lovely to be here. I want to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad you guys are here. And let's get into it. As we always do, we will begin tonight with the set-aside prayer. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, about the 12 steps, and please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. Okay, and as this is the fourth dimension big book study, I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the fourth dimension. So, if you would, please everyone join me on page 8. Where Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. So we're going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for the sake of custom and tradition, everyone who would, please put one hand up like this. Everybody put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh, yeah. All right, guys. I'm going to have fun tonight. I hope you guys will have fun tonight. It's entirely optional, but it's highly recommended. And it's always good for me to take suggestions in Alcoholics Anonymous. So my suggestion to you guys tonight is that we have a little fun, okay? We absolutely insist on enjoying life in Alcoholics Anonymous. This life is no longer a veil of tears for us, as it once was. So I am just trying to change the view here. There we go. There's the gallery. There's all my people. It was all on one person, you know, and I won't say who it was, but it was not doing it for me. So much better to see all of you. No. All right, guys, I'm very pleased to be here. We're going to be on the chapter We Agnostics. So just by way of a little bit of review, who can tell me? Everybody get on your muter, get on your unmuter, okay, and get ready to unmute yourself. Who can tell me what step is the chapter We Agnostics about? What step is this about? Greg Alto, he's not just giving a peace sign. He's letting us know, yeah, it's about step 2. I didn't know that. Okay, this chapter, We Agnostics, it's about step 2. Okay, who can tell me what it means to be agnostic? Anyone want to take a shot at that? That's a tougher question. Anyone want to take a shot at that?
Without knowledge.
Without knowledge. Who said that? Who was that? Mitesh, my man Mitesh. Without knowledge. Without knowledge of what? Without knowledge of God. Does that mean we don't have belief in God? No. It means we don't have knowledge. We don't have a relationship with God. You know, we had our friend Andrew, who's on the call last week, shared with us about, man, he was in the seminary to become a Catholic priest in the Vatican and couldn't stay sober. Okay. Lack of faith was not his problem. Lack of power was his dilemma. Okay. And there's only one way for us to get power, and that's to get jacked into it. We get jacked in by taking those 12 steps, 12-step program of action to get us connected to a solution that overcomes the problem. Okay. So as well, guys, let's get into We Agnostics. And I just want to review. We've talked about the two questions that I ask sponsees. I keep it very simple with the people that I work with. I don't overthink it too much, okay? So the first thing, we're going to be on page 47. We're going to talk about what are the step 2 proposals, the step 2 questions, okay? And tonight, my man Ronan is going to be reading for us. Ronan, give everybody a wave. Ronan, do you want to read for us page 47, second paragraph?
Hi everyone, Ronan, alcoholic.
Hey, Ronan.
We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe, that there is a power greater than myself?
Okay, so we'll just stop right there, Ronan. Okay, so that's the first step one question that I ask a sponsee. Okay, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe? And notice we don't even call it God yet. We're not even asking in this first question if somebody believes in God. We're just asking, do you believe there is a power greater than yourself? It could be Alcoholics Anonymous. It could be your sponsor. It could be anything, whatever the power is. Okay, whatever the power is that you believe in it. Okay, that's all that's required, is that we believe that there is something. Okay, it is okay for me to be afraid of this God, this power that I believe in. Okay, for sure. I'm terrified of God. Okay, but you believe that there is a God to be terrified of? Yeah, great. Okay, we can work with that. I hate God. I hate what he did, and I hate all the wars and all the stuff that he does and all that stuff. Okay, I'm with you. But I just want to be clear. You believe that there is a God who is doing all these things, right? Yes? Perfect. Great. We've got steps. We can help you with all the rest of it. We can help you with the resentment towards God. Okay, when we get to step 4, column 1, God. Okay, column 2, why? Okay, when we get to the fear inventory, we can help you with a fear about God. We can help you if you believe that you were abandoned by God. Okay, I can help you with that. We can help you with that. We have solutions for that. As long as I believe that there is a power that I was abandoned by. Okay, the only thing that we don't have a solution for in AA is absolutely not. No, I will never believe that there is a God ever. There is no such thing. That's tough for us to work with. I will concede that that is tough for us to work with. Now, before we get to the next step 2 question, can anyone remember, if I have a sponsee who says, no, I don't really believe in anything, what is one proposed response that I have to that sometimes works really well? Does anybody remember? Anyone? Craig?
Do you believe that I believe?
Who said that?
I said that, Rob.
Oh, Rob, perfect. And I think Craig knew it too. Yeah, do you believe that I believe in God? Can you believe in that? Right? And if that's the case, then just through like tacit approval, okay? If they can believe that I believe, we can start there, okay? And then, Ronan, would you be kind enough to read the rest of that sentence for us? As soon as a man says he does believe,
As soon as a man says that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built.
you know what I love? It says that he does believe, or he's even just willing to believe. There's a great he's not with us anymore, but he was one of the great old timers in Canada, a guy by the name of Cease Corrigal. And when people would ask him, Cease, how do we come to believe? He would say, make believe, make believe. Okay. And what did he mean by that? Well, it's something similar that I heard a newcomer say in AA one time. And it's very sad because, you know, I've taken this and adopted it and I use it. And this poor kid never was able to stay sober. He's still out there suffering right now. Okay. He had a period of sobriety for a while and then he stopped taking the actions and he got involved. His career became more important than AA. And so he's drinking again. But what he said, he said, I just pretended there was a God. I just pretended that there could be something. And then I started taking the actions of AA. And I think that that's a beautiful, beautiful thing, you know. The question says, do I now believe or am I even willing to believe? Okay. And that's it. From that simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. Okay. So guys, just to be clear, there's 2 questions that I ask a sponsee when we do step 2. I'll read through this chapter with them. And then there's 2 questions that I want to qualify. That's the first one. Do you now believe, or are you even willing to believe there's a power greater than yourself? 98% of the time, people believe that there is something, okay? Because we've all had that experience of being enchanted by a starlit night, okay? We've all felt that thing before, okay? We might have tried to blot it out or pretend it didn't exist, but we're gonna talk today in particular, about why that's so hard to do. Because within every man, woman, and child, I believe is pre-built into us, this idea, this fundamental idea of God, okay? We're gonna talk about that tonight. So 98% of the time, I ask question number one, do you believe, or are you willing to believe with the sponsee? They will answer in the affirmative. If they say, I don't really believe in anything, it's really hard for me, my response, and it tends to work, is do you believe that I believe? Great, we can start there. Okay, so now Ronan is going to read for us the second step 2 question, which is on page 53, second paragraph, when we became.
When we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis we could not postpone or evade, we had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or else God is nothing. God either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be?
Boom. Okay, so that's a big question. That's a big question. Okay, and I'm going to tell you how I simplify that. How do I reconcile that for myself? So the first thing that I'll ask as sponsee is like, look, is it safe to say that you are in a self-imposed crisis that you cannot postpone or evade? Is that safe to say? And they'll always, agree. Like, if you could postpone what you're going through right now, would you? Okay? If you could evade what you're going through right now, would you? Okay, but we can't. We cannot postpone or evade the terrible beating given to us by alcoholism. When we are driven to AA under the lash of alcoholism, finally beaten into a state of reasonableness, ready to take a surrendered action, we cannot postpone, we cannot evade what we're going through. Okay, so then it says, God is either everything or else he is nothing. He either is or he isn't. What was our choice to be? Like, that's a big question. As I joked about last week, I'm the kind of guy who would like eat a big handful of magic mushrooms or psychedelics and trip out on like, wow, man, is God everything, man? Man, God is it. Wow, God's everything, right? But the way that I simplify it for myself today is simply to ask this question. The power that I say I believe in question number 1. Okay, I believe there is something, yes. Do I believe that that power is more powerful than my alcoholism? Or do I believe that alcoholism is more powerful than the power that I believe in? Okay? And there's not been a single time that I've ever had someone that believes in God not believe that their power is more powerful than alcoholism. Because in order for step 2 to be, for this power to work, and for step 2 to be completed, so to speak, I have to believe, number 1, that there is a power, and number 2, I have to believe that the power is more powerful than my problem. Okay? And I'll tell you guys, I don't tell God how big my problems are. I tell my problems how big my God is. Okay? And so in order for step 2 to be completed, so to speak, those are the 2 questions. Do I believe in something, and do I believe that this thing is bigger than my problems? Okay? As soon as someone can tell me, yeah, I believe it's bigger than my problems, I say to them, congratulations, you're done step 2. Okay? And then we move on. So with that said, we're going to read the rest of this chapter. And so a couple of things here. We're going to tonight, in particular, we're going to focus on where do we find God. Okay? And I just love it. It's so beautiful, man. It's so beautiful what we're going to read through and what I was taught, really, and what I was fundamentally taught about where do I find God? Where do we seek God? Where do I find God? I had a sponsor. What I'm going to share with you guys tonight, I had a sponsor come over to the Oxford house that I was living in. This is over 20 years ago, man. I could show you where we were sitting in that little kitchen, in that terrible little kitchen table with, I remember there was sugar all over the table from coffee, and like I just, it's a vivid memory for me what my sponsor taught me about where we find God, and I'm going to share that with you tonight. We're going to finish the chapter, We Agnostics, and then we are going to skip to the back of the book, and we are going to read what's known as the spiritual appendix in the back. Okay, we're going to skip to it will be on page 569. It's already been indicated several times that we're supposed to read this. For myself, when I teach the book, my preference is to read page 569 on the spiritual experience after we read the story of Fitz-Mayo at the end of the chapter, We Agnostics. Okay, and so you guys will see what I mean here in a moment. So page 53, Ronan, ready to read, third paragraph, arrived at this point.
Arrived at this point, we were squarely confronted with the question of fate. We couldn't duck the issue. Some of us had already walked far over the bridge of reason toward the desired shore of fate. The outlines on the promise of the new land have brought luster to tired eyes and fresh courage to flagging spirits.
And so they're talking about this, walking across this bridge of faith. And why? Why do I want to walk across this bridge of faith? I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I wanted to walk across it, because I could see all of you on the other side of that bridge. And I could see what you had. When I was new, I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I knew that there was something going on. And you guys had all crossed this bridge and you were on the other side of this bridge. And I had to take that walk of faith across that bridge if I wanted to have what you had. If I wanted what you had, I had to do what you did. Okay? And that stands true to this day. You guys walked across that bridge. You were on the other side, on what it calls the shore of faith. Okay? And I had to walk across that bridge if I wanted to be with you. And man, I wanted to be with you. I wanted to be with you so badly, man. I'd been in and out of AA so many times. I knew that my way didn't work. You know, somebody told me one time, and I identified with this, every time before I'd come back to AA, I always felt like I was taking a step down into AA again, lowering myself to go be with the AA types again. And the last time I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, I felt like I was privileged and lucky to be there. And I was happy to be there. And I wanted to be with you deeply. And in order for me to do that, I had to walk across that bridge. And you may be at the same point. You may be asking yourself, you know, do I want what these people have? That's the second. Chuck Chamberlain calls that the second requirement for sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous. The first requirement is that we can see to our innermost selves that we are truly alcoholic. The second requirement is that I have to decide that I want what you have. And once I've done that, and I have to walk across that bridge, okay, the bridge of reason towards the shore of faith. Back to you, Ronan.
Friendly hands had stretched out in welcome. We were grateful that reason had brought us so far, but somehow we couldn't quite step ashore. Perhaps we had been leaning too heavily on reason that last mile, and we did not like to lose our support. That was natural, but let us think a little more closely. Without knowing it, had we not been brought to where we stood by a certain kind of faith? For did we not believe in our own reasoning? Did we not have confidence in our ability to think? What was that but a sort of fate? Yes, we had been faithful, abjectly faithful to God of reason. So in one way or another, we discovered that fate had been involved all the time. We found too that we had been worshippers. What a state of mental goose flesh that used to bring on. Had we not variously worshipped people, sentiment, things, money, and ourselves? And then, with a better motive, have we not worshipfully beheld the sunset, the sea, or a flower? Who of us had not loved something or somebody? How much did these feelings, these loves, these worships have to do with pure reason? Little or nothing we saw at last. Were not these things the tissue out of which our lives were constructed? Did not these feelings, after all, determine the course of our existence? It was impossible to say we had no capacity for faith, or love, or worship. In one form or another, we have been living by faith and little else.
So remember, guys, we talked about this last week. Bill Wilson right now is really trying to make the case to non-believers on why it's a good idea to believe in God, okay? And we talked through last week a bunch of different historical examples, and fundamentally, what he's trying to do is show us we all believed one thing, we were given new information, and we came to believe something new, something else, okay? So we talked about Columbus last week. Christopher Columbus, before Columbus, world is flat. Columbus gave us new information. Now we know the world is round, except for a couple of wackadoos on the internet, right? Okay. Galileo, before Galileo, the world believed that everything revolved around Earth. Galileo and his astronomical heresies proved that actually everything revolves around the sun, okay? We all believed one thing. We were given new information. We came to believe something else. The Wright brothers, it was proved that man could not fly when Professor Langley's flying machine went to the bottom of the Potomac. And then two men with just a simple faith were able to build the first flying airplane ever. And we all came to believe something else. We all know, I mean, I was just on a plane 2 days ago. I was on an airplane home from the State Line AA conference in Las Vegas. Incredible. I'll tell you guys more about that another time. What he's doing here is really trying to remind the non-believer who, again, guys, 1939, I mean, imagine this, April 10th, 1939, this book goes out into the world, okay? And it may be that you or I would have just been one singular person sitting alone with this book without the benefit of knowing anyone who was across the bridge of reason on the shore of faith, without seeing anyone else. So Bill Wilson, again, right now is trying to make the case to us on why we should believe in God. And this, for me, hits home a lot more than some of the historical examples that he uses. Because, yeah, I know what it's like to see a sunset or worship the sea or a flower, okay? Who has not loved something or somebody, okay? That, to me, is a much better selling point, okay, on the idea of God. Because we all know this idea of love, it's not tangible. We can't touch it. You can't see it. You can't hold it in your hand, but we all know, we've all experienced it. And that to me is a much deeper connection to something internally spiritual. And again, I say internally spiritual, and I'm going to come back to that very, very shortly. Back to you, Ronan.
Imagine life without faith, where nothing left but pure reason. It wouldn't be life. But we believed in life, of course we did. We could not prove life in the sense that you can prove a straight line as the shortest distance between 2 points, yet there it was. Could we still say the whole thing was nothing but a mass of electrons created out of nothing, meaning nothing, whirling onto a destiny of nothingness? Of course we couldn't. The electrons themselves seem more intelligent than that. At least so the chemist said. Hence we saw that reason isn't everything. Neither is reason, as most of us use it, entirely dependable, though it emanates from our best minds. What about people who proved that man could never fly? Yet we had been seeing another kind of flight, a spiritual liberation from this world, people who rose above their problems. They said God made these things possible, and we only smiled. We'd seen spiritual release, but like to tell ourselves it wasn't true.
All right, guys, this next paragraph, in fact, this next two sentences are fundamental and key in my understanding of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want you guys to make a little note here that says, see page 12, Bill's story, okay? Because I'm going to connect what they're about, what Bill Wilson is about to write here in the chapter We Agnostics to a section of Bill's story. And it's key to my understanding of Alcoholics Anonymous and why faith alone is not enough, okay? Because it is possible for me to believe intellectually and yet keep God out of my heart, okay? Because I'm filled with all of these things within me that are blocking me from this power. So let's read, Ronan, let's read the paragraph. Actually, we were fooling ourselves.
Actually, we were fooling ourselves, for deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by calamity, by pomp, by worship of other things, but in some form or other, it is there. For faith in a power greater than ourselves and miraculous demonstrations of that power in human lives are facts as old as man himself.
Okay, so first of all, that's our first indication of where God is. Deep down in every man, woman, and child. Okay, and to me, this is axiomatic. This is an absolute fundamental truth of humanity. That deep down within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. So what's the problem? If that's true, why am I having so much trouble staying sober? Why am I having so much trouble in Alcoholics Anonymous getting connected to this God y'all are talking about? tells me in the next sentence. It may be obscured, blocked by pomp, by calamity, by pomp, or by worship of other things. So what's calamity? Well, you can think of calamity just as trauma, okay? Or self-imposed crisis. I cannot postpone or evade, okay? Calamity. Pomp is just ego. Pomp is selfishness and self-centeredness and self-will run riot. There's no room for God because I've got my hands on the steering wheel and my foot on the gas pedal, and I'm gonna drive into this brick wall 100 miles an hour, and that's just the way it is. That's pomp. And then worship of other things. What are other things that people like us will tend to worship? Right? Money, career, relationships, power, prestige, okay? All of these things. And by the way, as an alcoholic, I don't choose one or the other, okay? I've got the full deck. So I've got calamity galore. I've got all the pomp. I've got enough pomp to choke a donkey, okay? And I'll worship, you name it, I'll worship it, man. Okay? You name it, I'll worship it. I'll turn them into addictions. Okay? Like, we don't worship shopping, we can become shopping addicts. I don't worship relationships and sex, we become sex and relationship addicts. That's how, like, we worship things, man. Okay? And if I can take that same thing and just direct it towards God, we do very well, very well. Alcoholism is I've been told, there was a priest that I knew who said Alcoholics Anonymous is a place where people can become weller than well. Okay? Alcoholism is the only disease where the sufferer can actually become better after the treatment than they were before they had the disease. You guys with me on that? We can be rocketed into this fourth dimension. It is real, it exists. I'll tell you what, brothers and sisters, I was in the promised land of Las Vegas over the weekend at the State Line AA conference, man. Okay, and you want to talk about people vibing on the fourth dimension? Essentially, it's 1,000 AA fanatics all in one room, is what it is, and it's beautiful, man, and it is real, and it is a room full of people who have become. It's not that we've solved all the problems and troubles and low spots of life, but we have tools, and these are people, these are expert craftsmen who know how to use these tools. So let's take a look at page 12 now. This is what I wanted to point out, okay? So deep down within, every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God, though it is obscured by pomp, calamity, and worship of other things. Let's see how that translates into Bill Wilson's life now on page 12, okay? And you might want to, just for context as well, like make a note here on page 12, see We Agnostics, page 55, right? So we're connecting it back and forth. But Ronan, if you could, at the bottom of page 12, the real significance.
The real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. For a brief moment, I had needed and wanted God. There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came.
Okay, so Bill Wilson needed God, wanted God, and God came. Okay? Needed God, wanted God, God came. There was a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. But I'll tell you what, brothers and sisters, needing things never made any difference in my life. Wanting things never made any difference in my life. The only thing that ever made any difference in my life, what's the magic word, guys? Doing. Doing things. Doing things is the only thing that ever made a difference. Bill Wilson hasn't done anything, okay? And so deep down within is the fundamental idea of God. He's connected to it, but now let's see what happens.
But soon the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly those within myself. And so it had been ever since. How blind I had been.
Bingo, guys, bingo. That's my problem. My problem is those worldly clamors, okay? And the problem is the amazing recuperative power of the alcoholic ego and the amazing recuperative power of those worldly clamors, okay? And I get new clamors all the time. And I'm the kind of guy, if I don't have clamors, I'll invent some, okay? I'll make them up, okay? The worst things in my life that I ever lived through never happened, okay? I cannot tell you how evil and destructive this brain is. This brain creates these worldly clamors. Point being, all of those things cut me off from the power. Okay. You guys have heard me talk about AA as being the great Wi-Fi. Okay. God being the great Wi-Fi. We all know what it's like to be connected to the Wi-Fi, right? We're all connected to Wi-Fi right now, correct? Yes. We wouldn't be on this call. We're connected right now. But we all know what it's like. Maybe you're out in the woods, or maybe you're down in a parkade or something like that. Can't get connected, can't get online, bad signal. Okay, you've got a bad, you're on the phone, you can't hear people. We've all been there, right? Nod your heads. We all know what that's like. Okay. Does that mean that the power is not there? Does that mean that the power abandoned me? Does that mean that the power doesn't love me? No, it means that I need to change something about my connection to the power. The power is strong, man, okay? And if I want 5G broadband connection, I've got to do the work. It's not about needing it, and it's not about wanting it. It's about doing it, okay? My problem, I don't have a lack of information problem. I have a lack of power problem, okay? I don't have a lack of desire to be sober problem. I have a lack of action problem. Okay, does that make sense, you guys? Okay, and the steps in AA, don't care why I take them. If I take the steps, I'll be well. And if I don't take the steps, if I don't live the steps in my life, I will not get well, and I will continue to suffer from alcoholism, both in sobriety and drunk, for years and years and years. Okay, I'm here to tell you, an alcoholic death is not the worst fate. The worst fate is living an alcoholic life for years and years and years. It's worse on me, it's worse on everyone. Okay, so now we're back on page 55, and I just want to point out that, so first of all, deep down in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. Now Ronan's going to read, we finally saw
that faith in some kind of God was a part of our makeup, just as much as the feeling we have for a friend. Sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. He was as much a fact as we were. We found a great reality deep down within us. In the last analysis, it is only there that he may be found. It was so with us.
Beautiful. Capital G, capital R, great reality. And where do we find it? Deep down within. Deep down. You notice that they say deep down twice. Do you see that? Deep down. That means we've got to do some work to connect to it, brothers and sisters. All right. Chuck Chamberlain, my great-grand sponsor, says we've got to uncover, discover, and discard the things that are blocking us. Uncover, discover, and discard things that are cutting me off so that I can get deep down in every man, woman, and child. The great reality deep down within me. And this is what my sponsor taught me 20 years ago. And I remember very well. Okay, and we're going to see one more time tonight where it indicates, where do we find God? Okay. You know, when we talk about the, anyone here know the Lord's Prayer? Our Father who art in heaven. Okay.
Mhm.
Think about that line, just those two words, okay? And what I'm going to talk about right now, I get from a great author named Emmett Fox, who was very, very instrumental. Emmett Fox's book, Sermon on the Mount, was instrumental in early Alcoholics Anonymous. Before the big book, the first 100, we're reading the book of James, 1 Corinthians 13, and Sermon on the Mount. Emmett Fox, Sermon on the Mount. Here's what he says about that, Our Father. First of all, it sets up the type of relationship that we have with God. This is not a king and his servants, or a tyrant or a dictator and his little peasants. This is a parental relationship. Our Father, okay? And almost without exception, I know that there's some outliers, but for the most part, how do parents feel about their children? Is it safe to say, for the most part, that parents love their children? Is that a reasonable thing to say? Yes, as it is with God and us, okay? And here's why I'm getting at this. The other thing that Emmett Fox says is that if God is our Father, children are made of what their parents are. Do you understand what I mean? Genetically, we are made up of the same stuff as our parents. And in this case, what we're talking about is God. We are of God. And so deep down within, we are made up of the same stuff that God is made up of. Okay. And in that sense, we are connected. When it says God is like in God's image or whatnot, we are made of the same stuff that God is made out of. So of course, deep down within us is the fundamental idea of God. Okay. Now God gave us a gift. God gave us free will, and we are able to choose to do whatever we want. Okay. We don't have to just animalistically, instinctually do whatever God wills us to do. Right? God gives us a choice. We can do whatever we want to do. And we'll talk more about that when we get to step 3. But we are made. So number 1, it's a parental relationship with God that we have, and parents tend to love their children. 2, we are made of the same stuff that God is made of. And then 3, if it's our Father, it's your Father, it's my Father. When I say we are brothers and sisters, I mean that in a very literal sense, that we have come from the same parent, the same Father in this case. So when we say deep down within, we are connected by the same thing, but we must uncover, discover, and discard to get into that deep down area within us where we can fully, truly connect to God and experience the 4th dimension. Okay, back to you, Ronan.
We can only clear the ground a bit. If our testimony helps sweep away prejudice, enables you to think honestly, encourages you to search diligently within yourself, then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. In this book, you will read the experience of a man who thought he was an atheist.
Okay, so this is the story of my man Rob just put the little bio there. This is a story of a guy named Fitz Mayo, one of the early members of Alcoholics Anonymous. Fitz Mayo was instrumental in getting this book published. I think it is safe to say that if Fitz Mayo was not a part of early Alcoholics Anonymous, this book may not exist. Okay. Certainly Bill Wilson wrote the book, but we owe a great debt of gratitude to a man named Fitz Mayo, who helped to get this book published. Fitz unfortunately got drunk. So sometimes they don't like to advertise. They don't like to hear too much about Fitz. And he was an atheist. He really struggled with God. But we're going to see this amazing spiritual experience that he has here in this next story. And then we're going to go to page 569, and you'll see why I like to read the spiritual appendix after we read Fitz Mayo's story. Back to you, Ronan.
His story is so interesting that some of it should be told now. His change of heart was dramatic, convincing, and moving. A friend was a minister's son. He attended church school, where he became rebellious at what he taught and overdosed of religious education. For years thereafter, he was dogged by trouble and frustration, business failure, insanity, fatal illness, suicide. These calamities in his immediate family embittered and depressed him. Post-war disillusionment, even more serious alcoholism, impending mental and physical collapse brought him to the point of self-destruction.
So when they talk here just quickly about post-war disillusionment, they're referring to World War I. Okay, so after World War I, everyone thought, "Hey, we won the Great War. It's going to be incredible," and you know it wasn't. Like life is life, and it wasn't easy. So they talk about post-war disillusionment. I just like to fill in the blank there and what they're talking about.
One night, when confined in a hospital, he was approached by an alcoholic who had known a spiritual experience. Our friend's gorge rose as he bitterly cried out, "If there is a God, he certainly hasn't done anything for me." But later, alone in his room, he asked himself this question: is it possible that all the religious people I have known are wrong? While pondering the answer, he felt as though he lived in hell. Then, like a thunderbolt, a great thought came. It crowded out all else. Who are you to say there is no God? This man recounts that he tumbled out of bed to his knees. In a few seconds, he was overwhelmed by a conviction of the presence of God. It poured over and through him with the certainty and majesty of a great tide at flood. The barriers he had built through the years were swept away. He stood in the presence of infinite power and love. He had stepped from bridge to shore. For the first time, he lived in conscious companionship with his creator.
Oh, there's that line again, right? Walking across the bridge of reason to the shore of faith. Okay. And he crossed that bridge in this moment in a very real spiritual experience that he had here in the hospital. Now, you'll see why I like to read the spiritual experience, the spiritual appendix on 569 after this, because it doesn't happen this way for everyone. It certainly didn't happen to me this way. We're going to talk more about that shortly.
Thus was our friend's cornerstone fixed in place. No later vicissitude has shaken it.
Okay, so again, what cornerstone? Upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. What cornerstone? That I now believe, or I am willing to believe there is a power greater than ourselves. That's the cornerstone. On that cornerstone, Fitzmayo was able to build this spiritual structure for the rest of his life. And says no later vicissitude has shaken it. Man, I had to look that word up when I came to AA. It just means problems. No more problems. No problem that he had. No trial or low spot that ever came to him after that has shaken that cornerstone. Okay? His alcoholic problem was taken away. Brilliant. Back to you, Ronan.
That very night, years ago, it disappeared. Save for a few brief moments of temptation, the thought of drink has never returned. And at such times, a great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly, he could not drink even if he would. God had restored his sanity.
I just want to point out what we've been talking about, okay? We talked about the physicality, the mental obsession. When we talk about insanity in Alcoholics Anonymous, we are singularly talking about the insane thought that precedes the first drink. We're not talking about all the crazy war stories. We're only talking about the mental obsession, the delusion, the illusion, the peculiar mental twist, the insane mental blind spot, whatever you want to call it. And in this situation, we see here, God has restored his sanity. Okay, notice it says the thought of a drink. The thought of a drink has not returned. Okay, if I don't have the thought, I don't have to worry about the physicality. Okay, God has restored us to our right minds, has enabled me to see and distinguish the true from the false. Okay, and so I don't believe the lie anymore. His alcoholic problem was removed that night. God had restored his sanity. Brilliant. Okay, back to you, Ronan.
What is this but a miracle of healing? Yet its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. He humbly offered himself to his maker, then he knew. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. To this man, the revelation was sudden. Some of us grow into it more slowly, but he has come to all who have honestly sought him. When we draw near to him, he disclosed himself to us.
Okay, so in the first edition of the book, you'll see it. What we're about to read on page 569 did not exist. Okay, they added this spiritual appendix later on page 569, and we'll see why as we read through it. One thing I just wanted to clarify, I got confused for a minute, and I appreciate Rob correcting me, and I appreciate that you did it privately, Rob, and didn't point out my error in front of everyone. Allow me to do that myself. Fitzmayo was not the individual who helped to publish the big book. That was Hank Parkhurst. Hank Parkhurst. I got confused. Fitzmayo actually wanted a very spiritual book. Hank Parkhurst and Jim Burwell did not want a God-centered book. And it was Hank Parkhurst who was instrumental in getting the big book published. He was a businessman. He had worked for Standard Oil. He had worked for John D. Rockefeller. He knew about raising money, and he was very helpful in creating some shares in a company called Works Publishing, and we got the big book published. I got the name confused. So thank you, Rob, for indicating that and reminding me of that. I don't want to give you guys any incorrect information. So I appreciate that. Okay, on page 569, guys, appendix 2, the spiritual experience. Let's read through it, and we're going to see one more time where we find God. Okay, deep down within every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. We found the great reality deep down within us. And now let's read through this. And we're going to see also why they felt necessary to kind of bookend this appendix after hearing about Bill Wilson's white light spiritual experience in the town's hospital and what we just heard with Fitz Mayo, you know, a big certain spiritual upheaval like that again in the hospital. Man, it didn't happen for me like that. And other people in AA were experiencing like, you know, I'm doing these steps and I'm not having this big burning bush situation. Am I okay? This is AA's response to that question. Back to you, Ronan.
Yeah, page 567 in my book, number 2, spiritual experience. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book, which, upon careful reading, shows that the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true that our first printing gave many readers the impression that these personality changes or religious experiences must be in the nature of sudden and spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire an immediate and overwhelming God consciousness, followed at once by a vast change in feeling and outlook. Among our rapidly growing membership of thousands of alcoholics, such transformations, though frequent, are by no means the rule. Most of our experiences are what the psychologist William James calls the educational variety, because they develop slowly over a period of time. Quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of the difference long before he is himself. He finally realizes that he has undergone a profound alteration in his reaction to life, that such a change could hardly have been brought about by himself alone. What often takes place in a few months could seldom have been accomplished by years of self-discipline. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped on an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves.
Okay, so we just saw it there, guys. With few exceptions, our members find that they have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, okay? Deep down within, every man, woman, and child, the great reality deep down within, and we have tapped an unsuspected inner resource, which they presently identify with their own conception of a power greater than themselves, okay? One of the things I like to point out, brothers and sisters, is that when Bill Wilson has his white light spiritual experience in the town's hospital, I invite you to go back and look at Bill's story and read it. That experience that he has doesn't just happen out of the blue. That experience happens after Ebby Thatcher comes to the town's hospital, December 16th, 1934, and between December 16th and December 18th, 1934, Bill Wilson does the steps with Ebby Thatcher. As a result of doing the steps, he has his white light spiritual experience. He tapped an unsuspected inner resource deep down within him, okay? So I remember very well my sponsor connecting those dots for me, okay? Deep down within every man, woman, and child, great reality deep down within, we tapped an unsuspected inner resource, okay? I need to stop searching for God. See, as an alcoholic, I'm all about trying to find things out there to put in here to make me feel okay. That's what I do, okay? And it's like the greatest, you know, God was hiding in plain sight all the time, deep down within. I just wasn't looking deep down within. I don't like to go deep down within myself, okay? Because that's where the screaming and the madness comes from, okay? Deep down within. I'm not looking for innermost selves. I'm looking for outermost things. Okay? Any type of medication I can get in here to make me okay. But I have to start looking inside. You know, I really believe in the saying, it's kind of cheesy, but if I don't go within, I go without. Okay? I believe that. And the best part is, though, I don't have to go alone. I don't have to go alone. I know you guys will come with me when I do that. Okay? I have a sponsor that will come with me when I need to go deep within. I'll tell you what, guys, I did, you know, I live this way of life, man. So I did my inventory. I did an annual inventory with my sponsor in Las Vegas over the weekend. And I had to go deep down within. I had some stuff that I needed to look at that I didn't want to look at. I don't know, you know, it's not fun. It's hard to do that, but I needed to, and I know I needed to, and I didn't have to go alone. Deep down within, my sponsor came with me and we looked at it together. Okay. And he helped me to see what was real and what was not. Okay. Because false things look true to me and true things look false to me. Okay. On my own, I'm living in a hall of mirrors, and my sponsor can give me judgment and clarity without any emotion attached to this plan or idea. So I went deep down within this weekend, and I'm so glad that I did. So I just want to point out this book to William James, The Varieties of Religious Experience. I'm sure Rob posted some stuff about it. If you get a chance, you know, download it, get it. I used to have a copy of it, and I lent it to someone. I never did get it back. But a couple things I'll tell you about that book. Number one, it indicates to me how intelligent, you know, Bill Wilson and some of the first 100 were, because it is an extremely dense book. It is not an easy read. Okay, if you read the first, you know, 100 pages of that book, it is incredibly difficult to get through. Anybody here read it? Anybody here taking a look? Yeah, it's a trudge, man. It's a trudge to get through that book. Esteban in Texas there, attaboy. Nice. And I saw Richard and Rob and whoever else. I mean, it's tough. It's a tough read, man. And it indicated to me how brilliant, you know, Bill Wilson probably was, man, to be able to get through that. The other thing is, at the end of that book, it has a bunch of stories about people, not alcoholic people, but people who, through a variety of different religious experiences, or spiritual life experiences rather, had this educational variety of relationship with God. Built this educational variety of experience. But so what that so one of the things that catches my attention, there's a so this book, it's a thick textbook to be studied, and then with a bunch of stories at the end. Okay, William James, Varieties of Religious Experience. Anyone know any other books that have a bunch of text to be studied and then a bunch of stories at the end? How about this one? Okay, so I think in some ways that framework was instructive for the first 100 in terms of our book. The other thing that catches my attention about the stories in the book, William James, The Varieties of Religious Experience, is that nobody comes to God in on a winning streak. Nobody comes to God because their toes are tapping and it's a beautiful sunshiny day, they got a lollipop in their mouth and they think they're going to convert to God suddenly. Okay, no, without exception, every person in that book is going through some type of suffering. Might be mental, emotional, physical. Suffering is what brings people to God, typically. Okay, and that is what is indicated in this book. And that also is very instructive to me as an alcoholic who only came to God after repeated failure after failure after failure after failure after failure. In the Hindu tradition, I think I've shared this before, but the Hindus believe that people who are closest to death are also people who are closest to God. And I think that has a lot to do with alcohol. That says a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous. Another thing I'll share with you. Anybody here ever heard of the stand-up comedian George Carlin? Kind of an older comedian. Show of hands, anybody know George Carlin? George Carlin one time famously said that God is the last refuge of a failed human being. Now, the first time I heard that, as you might, like, I took exception. I was like, how dare he say that? Who does he think he is? And then I was reminded quickly, I absolutely was a failed human being when I came to AA. I was failed in every area of life that a person can fail in. Hallelujah. We call that surrender. Okay? The war is over. I have failed. I concede. I need help. And from there, finally, I was able to let God in. And God was able to lift me up from the scrap heap to the best life I've ever known, rocketed and catapulted into the fourth dimension of existence. All right, Ronan, let's just finish up the spiritual experience and we'll be done for tonight.
Most of us think this awareness of a power greater than ourselves is the essence of spiritual experience. Our more religious members call it God consciousness. Most emphatically, we wish to say that any alcoholic capable of honestly facing his problems in the light of our experience can recover, provided he does not close his mind to all spiritual concepts. He can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial. We find that no one need have difficulty with the spirituality of the program. Willingness, honesty, and open-mindedness are the essentials of recovery, but these are indispensable.
Okay, so before quote here, I just want to point out, we've talked about attitude twice now. So initially it said, with this attitude, you cannot fail. What is that attitude? That attitude is the first question. Do I now believe, am I willing to believe there is something greater than myself? There's a power greater than myself. With that attitude that yes, I answer yes to that question, with that attitude, I cannot fail. Okay? And here it says, I can only be defeated by an attitude of intolerance or belligerent denial, which again is to say, no, there isn't, I refuse, I'll never believe. That attitude will defeat us in Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay? Beyond that, if we're willing to stay open-minded and then start doing some simple actions to get connected to that power, with that attitude, we cannot fail. Okay, we talk about success rates in Alcoholics Anonymous. I always love to say, my sponsees know, I say all the time, success rates in Alcoholics Anonymous are 100%. There's a 100% success rate in Alcoholics Anonymous because Alcoholics Anonymous is based on God and God is infallible. God is infallible. If he's fallible, he's not God. God is infallible. And if I'm willing to seek and do the work that is required to get connected to that power, God will never fail me. With that attitude, I cannot fail. I believe that wholeheartedly, okay? So now, we're going to read this famous quote. I really think this quote is kind of made famous by Alcoholics Anonymous. But the author of this is a guy named Herbert Spencer. He was an English philosopher and psychologist in the 1800s, and he's going to talk about contempt prior to investigation.
There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation.
Contempt prior to investigation just simply means I hate it before I've ever even tried it. Okay? Simple. And I can be that way. You know, I hated sushi. I'd never tried sushi, but I hated it. Okay? Raw fish. How good could it be? Well, let me tell you, I went to an all-you-can-eat sushi place in Las Vegas. Believe me, I don't hate sushi, not anymore, but I had to try it. I had to try it, okay? And so that's what that example is all about. All right, guys, that's going to be it for tonight. So don't jump off the meeting just yet. My favorite part is, you guys know, we're just going to quickly go around the circle and say hello to everyone. Just say a quick hello, unmute yourself, say hello, let us know